These are the new FLX consoles from 088. We've got the FLX 24 and we've got the FLX 48. FLX consoles can control twice the amount of fixtures as they have faders. So the FLX 24 can control 48 lights and the FLX 48 can control 96 lights. A fixture can be anything from a generic dimmer to an LED par can or a moving light. You can access all of these fixtures by simply toggling the page button on both consoles. As well as the faders controlling individual lights, pressing this button here will flip the faders into playbacks function. A playback, such as what's playing here, can be used to record lights onto a fader to play back later. To the right of the faders, you have the master playback. This fader is used to store multiple scenes to build a cue list for a more theatrical playback. To the right of the master playback, you've got 6 function buttons that will never change what they're doing. So things like record, update, delete, changing what you're seeing on the touchscreen, those buttons will always be there for you. Above these 6 buttons, we've got the 7-inch multi-touch touchscreen. That will change depending on what you're doing on the console. By default, we've got icons along the top of the touchscreen. The top left icon is a save icon. Tap that, and if you've got a memory stick plug-in, a copy of your show will be dumped to the USB stick. The next icon is the outputs window. This will show you all your lights patched in the console, and will show you the levels that they're at. We then have the cue list window. This will show you a list of your cues that are programmed onto your playbacks. Then you've got your faders window. Faders window will literally show you what your faders are currently doing. So they'll show you whether they're in playbacks or controlling your channels, and they'll tell you what page you're currently on to. You've then got your groups window. Groups are used to quickly select different selections of lights. You can record your own groups, or you can automatically create groups, and FLX will create groups for you. When you start turning fixtures on and selecting them, different tabs will appear along the top of the touchscreen. These tabs are your control options for your currently selected fixtures. So for example, with these currently selected lights, we've got colour, position and effects tabs. Below the touchscreen, you've then got your 4 encoder wheels. These change their function depending on what you're doing on the console. So they can be used to change parameters of your selected lights, or when you're in the cues window, for example, they can be used to set fade times. Along the bottom third of the touchscreen, we have a function called guidance. Guidance is live updating depending on what you're doing on the console that will tell you what to do next. As well as guidance, pressing Z brings you to quick access functions, another feature that helps you use FLX. As well as this, we've also got rig sync, a feature that in the background of FLX will keep your lighting rig and FLX console synchronized. On the back of the consoles, we've got some different connections. We've got the power input, we've got a USB port that can be used to connect keyboards, USB lights or memory sticks to save your show. We've then got an Ethernet port that can be used for Ethernet-based lighting rigs or can be used to connect to remote apps. And we've also got a 3-pin and a 5-pin DMX output. On the FLX 48, we've got a DVI external monitor output. That, if you use one of the USB ports, can be a touchscreen. The FLX 24 can be rack mountable. In a later video, we'll take a look further on how to use the consoles. In this video, we're going to look at how to control the colour of your fixtures on the FLX consoles. To do this, first of all, you need to push up the channel faders of your lights. Doing this has opened several tabs along the top of the touchscreen to allow you to control your lights. This is because channels are automatically selected when you push their faders up. However, you can change the selection manually by using the channel select buttons under the faders. Only the fixtures which are selected with their buttons lit will be affected. Pressing the Colour Palettes tab will show you automatically created colours for your lights. The palettes highlighted in blue are for your currently selected fixtures. You can apply these colour palettes to your light by simply tapping them. Another way of controlling the colour of your fixtures is by using the colour picker. Press that and you're presented with a colour picker image. In there you can then go and press, and this will apply that colour to your lights. You can also use multi-touch on this colour picker. So press one finger on there and then with another finger spread that colour across your lights. Down the left of the colour picker screen, we've got some preloaded images that you can use to apply quick colours to for your lights. Below these images, there's also a plus symbol. Pressing that and you'll be able to load your own image in from USB that you can then grab colours from. You can use these images in exactly the same way we did the colour picker, in that you can use multi-touch on them and grab colours from it. FLX also has mood boards by Lee Filters. Opening the mood boards tab will show you several different groups of colours that Lee Filters have prepared that work well together on stage. Whenever you're in any three of the colour tabs, the encoder wheels will have your colour controls of your fixtures. So this may be individual red, green, blue control of your fixtures. If there are more than 4 colour controls available for your lights, pressing the same tab again will cycle through the different pages of colour control your lights may have. Once you've created a colour you like, maybe using the colour picker, you can then save that colour. To do this, we record a colour palette. Press record and you'll immediately jump back to your colour palette screen. You can then scroll down and there will be several locations marked with an asterisk. Tap in these and your colour palette is saved. You can now use your recorded colour palette in the same way you did your previous ones. Tap it and that colour will be applied straight to your lights. On the FLX S24 you can have a maximum of 48 palettes. On the FLX S48 you can have 96 palettes. FLX S consoles have built-in effects that can be used with your fixtures. To apply a colour effect to your lights, first of all you need to turn your lights on. You can do this by pushing up their faders. This will automatically select them and open up tabs. You can change the selection by manually tapping the select buttons under the channel faders. The last tab that's opened along the top of the touchscreen is the Effects tab. Press this and you'll be presented with several automatically created effect palettes. Going in and tapping one of these will apply it to your lights. The currently highlighted effects palettes are ones that are compatible with your currently selected lights. When you apply an effect straight away, all the lights will be doing exactly the same thing, but you're able to offset and fan and spread that effect across the currently selected lights. To do that, you can use the offset buttons along the top of the screen. So you can, for example, offset that individually. So it will spread that rainbow across your lights. When in the Effects tab, our encoders have changed to adjust our effect. So for example, we can speed the effect up. In a later video, we'll look at how to store these colours into playbacks. This video is looking at how to control the beam and position of your fixtures on the FLX S lighting consoles. First of all, you need to turn your lights on. You do this by being in channel mode and pushing up the faders of your lights. You can change the selection manually using the buttons. With all of those selected, we've got our tabs opened along the top. These tabs allow us to control the colour, beam and position of our lights. These particular lights are moving lights, therefore they have the position control. So if I tap the position tab, my encoder wheels change to be pan and tilt. So I can tilt them out towards us like that, and I can pan them, which moves them left and right like that. Once you have your lights in a position you're happy with, you can store that position as a position palette. To do that, tap the record button and tap one of the position palettes marked with an asterisk. Your position is then stored. We've also got the option to fan that position. So if you hold the Shift key and then dial, for example, the pan encoder, you can actually fan how those lights behave. So for example, you can fan them into the centre of your stage or fan them out from the centre. Again, when you've set that fanned position to how you like it, you can tap record and save that as a palette as well. Once you have some palettes recorded, you can manually tap these palettes to move your lights. Notice how your lights are snapping when you tap the palettes. You can actually apply a fade time to these positions. To do that, press the Z key and the right encoder wheel is programmer time. If we tap that encoder button, that will turn the programmer time on, and we can then dial that encoder down to set our fade time, for example 3 seconds. Once we've set that, go back to your position palettes view, and now when you press your position palettes, your lights will fade to that position over the time you've set. As well as using the encoders and also the palettes to control your movement of your lights, we've also got the pan and tilt grid. This allows you to manually go in and tap to give locations to your lights. Once you've put them in a location, you're then able to use the encoders to fine adjust it. When you've put your fixtures in a position you're happy with, you can actually apply an effect to that position. Tap the Effects tab and it will give you several effects for your currently selected lights. I can now go in and tap one of those, for example, a horizontal line, and my lights will start to move with that effect. There are buttons along the top of the effects window that allow me to offset my lights, so that rather than all doing the same thing, they can be doing different things. Once you've applied an effect, your encoder wheels will change to be speed, size and offset, various controls where you can change the rate of the effect and change how large a surface your lights may move over. To stop an effect, simply tap the No Effect button. As well as position effects, there are also intensity effects that can be great for quickly putting chasers onto your lights. For example, I can go in and put a chaser onto these lights, and then in the same way I offset my position, I can offset them so they start to chase each other. Again, to stop that effect, I can simply go to the top effect palette, which is No Effect. All other controls of your light would come under the Beam tab. Beam can control things such as gobos for moving profiles, or it can control zoom. These fixtures, for example, have a zoom, which on the encoders I can dial that zoom in and out. More advanced fixtures have several different controls that come under the Beam tab. So to get to those extra controls, just tap the Beam tab again to cycle through the different encoder groups. If you set up, for example, a zoom size that you like and you might want to use again, you can store that as a beam shape palette. This is done in exactly the same way we did a position palette. So press record and then tap an empty beam shape palette marked with an asterisk. That zoom is then stored and I can use it later. To learn how to record beams, positions and effects into playbacks, see our later videos. In this video, we're going to look at how to record cues and playbacks onto the FLX lighting consoles. First of all, you need to start by building some lighting that you want to record. To do this, push up the faders of some lights. Doing this has selected these lights and opened some tabs to allow me to control the light. I can change what lights get controlled by these tabs by changing the selection using the buttons below the faders. With those channels turned on and selected, I can, for example, go into the Colour tab and make them blue. Once I'm happy with the look I've created on stage, I can record this onto a playback fader. To do this, I press the record button and my playbacks will then flash. I can then go in and press one of the flashing faders to store it to there. Remember, if you want to store it onto page 25 to 48, you can press the page button. I can then press that playback button to finish recording. To see the playback I've just recorded, I need to take the faders down and double press clear. I can then go into playbacks by using the channels or playbacks function button, and I can see that the LED under the fader that I just recorded it to is lit. I can then push that fader up and the lights will move and change the colour to where they were when I recorded that playback. FLX consoles also have a master playback. This can be used for a more theatrical cue list setup. To record onto this, again we need to set up a scene of lighting that we want to store. So we can go into channels and again let's put up our lights. We can then put them into a position and we can put them into a colour. Once we're happy with the lighting we've created, we can record that to the master playback. In the same way, we press record and then we press the flashing master playback button. To record your second scene, you can then change the lights that are on. So maybe I want them off and then some more lights on, and this time in that colour there. Once you're happy with your lighting, you can then record this as your second cue by pressing record and pressing the master playback button again. You can then repeat this process many times for different cues that you may want to record. At any time, you can go into the cues window by pressing the cue list icon and see the cues that you've recorded. So to record scene 3, for example, I might want it to be a blackout. So I can turn my lights off and then press record and the playback button in the same way. I can now see my 3 cues in the cue list window. To play back that cue list, again, I need to double press that clear button, and then I can put that master playback up and my cues will start to play through. I can then use the go button to advance through these cues to see the different lighting looks that I've stored. As you record cues, the console will give some default fade times that will affect the transition from cue to cue. You're able to go in and change these fade times by tapping in the fade times cell in the cue list window and using the encoders to adjust the fade times. You can also set fade times in the recording process. So I might want to put these lights on here, put them in position and in a colour. Once I'm happy with what I've stored, I can press record, but before pressing the master playback button, again my encoders have become fade times, so I can use these to set a fade time. And then I can press the master playback button. If I go back to my cue list window, I can see that Q4 has now been stored with the fade time that I just set. Once you've got cues recorded, you may want to change them. So for example, let's go into Q2 on the console. This is our second cue that we recorded, and maybe we want to add in that light there in that position there. To add that into Q2, we can simply just press the update button and then press the master playback button. If we now take that playback fader down and push it back up and then go into Q2, we can see that it's added in that extra light to Q2. If I'm in Q2, as I am now, I may want to insert a cue between Q2 and Q3. This is where we use something called point cues. So maybe I want to change my lights on stage, so I want them to go out, and I want that one that's currently on to go blue. I can now record that by pressing record, but I now need to define the cue number. So I can now press the Z key and using the on-screen keypad, type in the cue number. So I'm going to put 2.5. Once you've typed the cue number in, you can then press the master playback button. In the cue list window, we can then see it's recorded a cue 2.5. If I double press clear to go back to Q2 and then press the go button to advance into Q 2.5, we can see that cue that we've just added in. You are able to define a specific cue number to 2 decimal places. At the end of the row of each cue, there's a little settings button. Pressing that and it gives you several options for each specific cue, so you can change whether it may be an auto cue, for example. Details of all of this are in the manual.